I hear a lot of phrase mongering and ideology about the individual and the collective. I'm an individualist, I'm a collectivist, whatever it is. And I think that this is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of philosophy for the most part. Now, I do reject bourgeois individualism. I reject the right of an individual to hold infinite amounts of property and capital away from the great masses of people in their exclusive control. I absolutely do reject that form of individualism. But this notion that rejecting that individualism is the same as rejecting individualism as a concept is a completely wrong-headed understanding of these things. Now, a lot of Marxists love to talk about dialectical materialism, but they don't understand that this model of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? This dialectical contradiction with some resolution. That does not describe the dialectics of the universe, of the world as we know it. The dialectic of heaven and earth, right? The separation, the contradiction between heaven and earth, which is often an analogy, heaven being the ideal and earth being the material. This is not something that can be resolved at all. It will never be resolved. Reality is sitting between these things. To resolve this would be to destroy all of reality. Man and woman, the contradiction between man and woman. There's no resolution to this. There's no resolution to this. And if we seek to pretend that all contradictions can be reconciled, you're actually exiting a dialectical worldview and entering the static metaphysical view. You're seeing the dialectic not as something in motion, not as something eternal, but as almost like a math equation that can be solved. Now, let's think for a moment. What truly is the individual? You say you're an individualist, right? Now, so you can say, yeah, the individual, that's me, right? But what do you mean by that? I think that the individual truly is an ideal. In terms of reality, the individual is a constant, material reality. The individual is sort of a constant biological process. The individual is like a living organism, that exists in some path through time, through space. But this material organism itself, right? If you simply say, well, I support that, I'm an individualist in this sense, then you're not really saying anything, really, because this organism is created from the collective. You physically came out of another being, your mother. You physically came out of. You are nurtured by reality around you. All of the atoms in your body come from the external. You are in the world. You are in society. And it's shown that individuals outside of society, they don't function. They do not thrive. They die. So if you say you're an individualist, then aren't you really saying that you support the collective means towards this individual? on some level, because consequentially you are. If you are supporting individual organisms in their free action, individual beings, then what are these actions set before them? What are these external things set before them in the first place? Now, at the same time, I hear people say they are collectivists, right? They're a collectivist. And the individualist loves to smack them in the face and say, you're a free individual. You're an individual, so how can you say that you're a collectivist? You're neglecting yourself. You think people are just drones, all this stuff, right? But it's not true. And the collectivist has to recognize, well, because the collective is composed of individuals, and to the extent that human activity is, the society, right, is the product of human activity, the collection of human activity. The collective is society itself, right? But you have to acknowledge it's composed of these individuals. And therefore, consequentially, to be a collectivist, you must support the development of these individuals. So, to say that you are an individualist or a collectivist, in a true consequential understanding of things, it's actually kind of saying the same thing. And in my view, it's not a valid way to dichotomize beliefs at all. You have these communists saying, I'm a collectivist. And like I said at the start of this video, the only coherent way to say that you're a collectivist is to oppose bourgeois individualism, to place a sort of economic collectivism, which itself is not an imposition, actually, but a realization of the inherent collectiveness that already exists. Production under capitalism is already collective. Communists seek only to reconcile this with the property relations of society, with the distribution and ownership and all of this in society must be reconciled with the fact that production is itself collective. You have libertarians saying, I'm an individualist. Communism destroys individuality. Now, to the extent that this can be a misunderstanding, like, for example, Jordan Peterson, a Jungian, Jung asserts, Carl Jung, that there is an individualism that's destroyed by communism, that communism seeks to crush and destroy the individual, and we must oppose it on the basis of our true selves, our true individuality. But this itself is a distortion of and a reflection of the bourgeois understanding of communist collectivism, which involves seizing the disproportionate power of the capitalists. And these people, these capitalists who fear their power being usurped, they fear their property being seized, these people project that understanding onto everyday working people who themselves stand only to gain from that, if done properly, if done right. They stand only to gain from it. And the truth is, there is no individual in an ideological sense. So yes, there's the individual organism. There's the collective, the whole of society. But in the terms of the ideal sense, there's none. There's none. These are poles of the ideal, but our understanding of an individual outside of society, that is a dead individual. That is a non-existent individual. And the understanding of a collective without the individual is an empty collective. It's a collective with nothing in it. So our ideal of individual and collective, these are endpoints. These are endpoints of an understanding or a view. They are not real. The abstract individual, the abstract collective, both of these concepts contain internal contradictions which render them not real. Now, before I end this video, there's a slogan that I often hear from the leftists, and it's a pro-LGBT slogan, which is only you know who you truly are, and other people, they can't tell you who you are. I'd like to place this against things that you often hear from conservatives, typically anti-LGBT type thing, but sometimes it manifests in different ways, which is to state men cannot be women, women cannot be men, idiots can't be smart, ugly people can't be pretty, New Yorkians can't be Californians, all of this, right? It's the separation and boundaries of trying to basically place a limit and say it is what it is. And when you really think about it, nobody can say that they exclusively know who they are. There's a social determination of the individual. There's a collective determination of the individual. The words that you use to describe yourself come from the objective ideals of society impressed upon you. And even the notions of gender, though they are a physical reality, come from a collective social ideal, right? You cannot say that you only know who you truly are. But in comparison to the conservatives dividing, limiting, saying it is what it is, this statement makes sense. Simultaneously, conservatives saying men cannot be women, women cannot be men, etc. This is not saying anything. It's saying nothing at all. And conservatives are often smug with how obvious what they're saying feels to them, right? And how stupid people must be not to understand it. But what they're doing is placing it in opposition. These ideas only make sense in opposition to each other. They don't make sense on their own. And in a sense, they complete each other. And a person who can understand the objective ideological contradiction at play here between the sort of individual freedom, the limitless mind, and this blocked out material reality full of walls and limits, unchanging. This person cannot help but reject this dichotomy, cannot help but inherently reject the ideology of the culture war, which itself is incomplete. And this is why neither side of the culture war will ever win, because both sides are incomplete. So overall, I discourage people from using these words, individual and collective, when what they really mean is we want to nurture the individuals. We want to care for the individuals of society. We don't want to leave them down, right? And in this sense, we are individual. In this sense, we are individualists. But at the same time, we understand, we recognize that production itself is organized collectively. Society itself is organized collectively. And that in order to nurture the most people, all of the people, and the individual people, we must recognize both the individual and the collective. And there is a type of individualism, the bourgeois individualism, and the property relations attached to it that get in the way of true individualism and collectivism, which we must strive for. And with that, I hope you got some insight. Let me know what you think. And like and subscribe. I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.